What's happening, guys? Welcome to the JBS Training Group Podcast. My name is Mark Smith. I am your host. I own and operate JBS Training Group, which is a firearms training company that travels the nation teaching guys what I know about shooting fast and accurate. Hope you enjoy this episode. If you'd like to know more about JBS Training Group or where you can get in on a class, you can visit www.jbstraininggroup.com. Enjoy the show. What's happening, y'all? JBS Training Group Podcast coming to you with an exclusive interview with Jim Hodge of Hodge Defense. This is really cool that Jim has chosen and agreed to sit down with me and chit chat about rifle stuff and his product and his vision and his brand. For those of you that are unaware of who Jim is, Jim has become a very good friend of mine over the past few years. I shoot for Hodge Defense and have been doing so for about 2 years now, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, not real sure. But Jim's rifles, and this is the AR-15 platform, they are what I believe to be the pinnacle of the conventional AR-15 style rifle. And when I say conventional, I mean like no piston systems, no weird stuff, no proprietary stuff outside of the metallurgy and the different materials, but just it's a standard AR-15, but it's so much more than a standard AR-15. Crazy smooth shooting guns, very fast barrels, very long lasting barrels. If you're new to JBS, here recently we just shot out the first Hodge barrel that I've ever shot out at 42,000 rounds, which is extremely impressive. That was majority of those rounds suppressed. And that's just fantastic. And in this episode, we just kind of sit down with Jim and say, hey, Jim, what in the world is Hodge Defense? Where are we going with this? Why should people look at you? Why should they not look at you potentially? And just kind of to give a little bit of context to the mystery that is Jim Hodge. So we appreciate the heck out of him coming on and doing this. And without listening to a whole lot of me, I'm going to turn it over to the interview and let Jim speak for himself. Jim, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. And yourself?
Better than most, for sure. Far better than I deserve. If you will, guys, if you don't know anything about Jim Hodge, he owns Hodge Defense, and Hodge is the brand of rifles that I prefer to use for a number of various reasons. But without me attempting to tell you who he is, I'm gonna let him tell you who he is. So, Jim, if you would, a little intro from you. Who are you?
Hello, people. I started the company about 10 years ago. February was its 10th anniversary. Started on the heels of doing some contracting work, and been around carbine for a while professionally, and played in this industry for longer than 10 years. And as you get older and fatter, you tend to slow down a little bit. And Mama's like, "Hey, you've helped a lot of people out in this industry. Why don't you help yourself out and start your own thing? And rather than chasing bad guys around the planet, chase me around the house, and you can stay home." So it sounded like a good deal to me. Again, started the company 10 years ago with the vision of making a carbine that I'd want to use. Not that I'm any better or any worse than anybody, but that I would really want to use. And that's where Hodge Defense started.
And now your background, you were an Army guy or different branch or what?
Right place, right time in the contracting world.
Okay.
And worked with a bunch of those type of folk. But yeah, I did that for a number of years. From 2005, 2005 to pass through 2011 into 12, and then 13 is when we started Hodge Defense.
Super cool. So in layman's terms, what is it that you set out to do differently with the AR-15 platform that you perceived was either not being done or not being done well enough? What did you want to do better, and the desire to do it better, did that come from experiences you had or just these were just good idea fairies that showed up and made you want to change some stuff.
Yeah, Mark, doing it better, better to whose standard? I just wanted to do a good job. I'm not trying to one up anyone. I'm not trying to compete against ABC brand or anything like that. I just try to do the best I can. And hopefully, again, it's not a competition for me. People can be like, yeah, capitalism, this, that, and the other. But it really isn't, man. I just want to do a good job. Honest to God. That's all I care about. It's just doing a good job, man. And so, but I look at it through the lenses of, all right, what can I do different? I mean, I have to have market penetration. And by doing so, what can I offer that's different? And when we first started off with the Mod Ones, just really kind of giving a crap every time you built a gun. I mean, I paid a lot for my parts because I wasn't buying in high volumes, and my receivers were beautiful, and everything worked well, and got really lucky and started a brand, and I was off to the races. The next thing you know, I'm like, okay, what can I do now? Um, my first guns were still hammer forged barrels. At the time I was working well with Daniel Defense. And when we first started, I had a great relationship with Daniel Defense. Still have a great relationship with Daniel Defense. And hell, they'd even put Hodge Defense on their website, saying, hey, for special projects. And after a while, they took it down. Um, and FN picked me up and kind of did the same thing for FN. But uh, really cared about the quality of the materials. It's like, again, the hammer forged barrels. Make sure we're using 70-75 impact extruded receiver extensions. And it was little things like that to me made a difference. Maybe it made a difference to the consumer. Hell, they probably didn't know a lot of it, but maybe it did, maybe it didn't.
Well, that's the thing, right? A lot of people, I don't think necessarily need the differences that it makes. You know what I mean?
True.
There's a lot of dudes that the rail flex that they have holds no bearing whatsoever on what they're doing with the gun. Like, they don't give a crap.
No, yeah. I mean, if you're running a light and that's all you're running, you're never going to notice it, man. And maybe a lighter rail, I guess no pun intended with the light on it, but a rail that weighs less may be an advantage to you because you're really not running, night vision. And if you're not running night vision, no point in adding the weight and taking up the rail space with a laser.
Sure.
And if you're not running laser, run whatever rail feels the nicest, maybe stays the coolest in your hand. It's light, doesn't have a bunch of hard edges on it. And, there you go. But I looked at rails differently, man. And not that I saw a discrepancy in flex. It was on my mind when we designed the wedge lock, and I say we because Mega Machine, before Zed, before any of this, they designed. I knew I wanted an elongated barrel nut. That's what I knew, and I wanted as much bearing surface in that thing as possible. And they designed the little tricky wedges in the wedge lock. Um, the wedge lock outer part is damn near 100% Jim Hodge. So the extrusion, tool, they can't say tool because I didn't I didn't write code for it. The engineer did that. But I had and I still do have a great working relationship with an engineer that can read my mind. And those dudes, for a guy like me who's a creative guy, not an engineer, finding those guys that can understand what you're thinking, and when you start drawing stuff up, on napkins, the proverbial napkins, and sending it over and saying, add this, and add this. So he was the guy that understood that. So the wedge lock, the entire outside is Hodge Defense. And that's where we started with the rail.
So for the people that are just now becoming privy to the fact that Hodge Defense even exists, because there's not a lot of talk about it outside of certain groups that kind of appreciate the good stuff in life. Some people, I guarantee, that are listening to this have never heard of Hodge Defense. And you mentioned Mod One. What would you? How do you describe the difference to a person that doesn't know any better of what a Mod One and a Mod Two is? What kind of differences are there between those things?
Simply receivers, and then when we do build full guns, everyone's probably laughing at that. Um, some of it is I don't say accessory, but fire control selection. It could be a trigger. Well, it is oftentimes. If I'm building a Mod One full gun, it's getting a cleaned up GI trigger. It's not getting an ambi mag release. It's not getting a C1 selector. But it's still getting a Badger Universal selector, and it's getting an AR-10 bolt catch and standard castle nut and end plate. Um, it's getting our forward assist and still getting our pivot pins, but at the end of the day, it's the receivers, it's the alloy in the receivers, it's the receivers.
So where did the idea for the Mod 2 come from? Like, as far as why did we decide to change the metallurgy of the receivers?
So I was searching for something. I sit back and I ponder, is 70-75 good enough? And I'm going to tell everybody right now, 70-75 is good enough. Is it the best? I don't know. No.
Based on what parameter?
Based on what parameter, right? The same thing with hammer forged barrels and chrome line hammer forged barrels. Is it the best? It depends what you need, and it may be the best for your application. I have seen, right now you see a lot of guys putting steel inserts in cam path pockets, right? Look at SIG, some other good brands out there that are doing that. You know what I mean, Mark? You
No,
see
I don't
those.
know what that means. What's a cam pad pocket?
So if you're looking inside the upper, if you take your bolt carrier group out, you look inside the upper, you got that little kind of crescent cutaway where the cam engages and disengages through the upper. So you'll see some companies put a steel insert in there. It's kind of a new thing to do. Those cam pocket, steel inserts.
Right.
One of the things about the HK416 was it was pretty violent recoiling system, and it would wear the shit out of their upper receivers in two major places. But one of them was where that as the bolt carrier comes back and that cam slams up against inside of that receiver, it creates a gouge. All receivers do it. You're not going to wear out a receiver. I mean, eventually it's going to get to a point where you wear into it and it's not going to wear anymore. But long and short of it, you take like a Mod 2 that's in C405. When we first started off in aluminum lithium with fence, we worked on that for a while, man. It took a while to get that right. And then we switched to aluminum lithium because it was cheaper. I mean, I got the same, actually, I exceeded its toughness properties, but I got the same weight as 70-75. But we take our C405 and we're like, okay, we got a 40% add and density of that alloy. Well, then I don't need to put a steel liner in there, do I? And for the difference, the money difference it has, as far as the cost difference it has between creating, building, installing a steel plate in there, a bumper plate, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what the proper terminology is on it.
Whatever.
Whatever, right? So, so it's stiffer. It it does lend to less wear. And there you go. And to me, an upper receiver has to be stiff. I think the upper receiver personally um, is more critical than the lower receiver. But that's just me.
Well, then I do too, because I'm sure I don't know. Um, that's cool, man. There's a lot of questions that people sent in. We had on the email subscriber list a little box where they could send in questions to ask you and whatnot. And so I was going to hit on a couple of those, and I think a lot of, at least some of those, will segue into other parts of conversation. So, um, are you able to talk about some of the consulting work that you've done in the industry and some things that you've helped with that people may not even know about?
Yeah, to a limited degree, yeah.
So, what would be something that you think people would recognize that you've had a part in that nobody really knows?
Barrett Imrad.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes, I've been around this industry for more than 20 years in one way, in some fashion or the other. Not necessarily always as a consultant, because I never really, until recently, was never monetized being a consultant.
I understand. There's another one here that kind of jumps off of that one. Says, could Jim please better explain his relationship with Mike Michalski and how they met and eventually decided to collaborate together?
Yeah.
So, for those that are unaware, Mike Michalski is the face of Sons of Liberty Gunworks. He owns Sons of Liberty Gunworks. If you've heard of those guys.
I've met Mike. I think I made it a point to go visit Mike um, when he first started off, and they were very, very small. And
He's pretty close to you, right? Like he's in the same town or area.
yeah, no, he's in San Antonio. So yeah, good point. So I made a point to go visit him one day, just for my own morbid curiosity, and I did. And that's really kind of how we met. It wasn't like a chance meeting or anything like that. It was just kind of, again, how we met. I made the effort to go meet him, and and we talked guns and we talked strategy and, hey, what are you doing here and what are you doing here, and there you go, and basically it was, the relationship turned into, bouncing, ideas and off each other, but talking about, what's going on in the industry, talking about supply chain management, talking about, the state of the industry, um, things like that. We've helped him um, with some relationships that he didn't need the help. He just needed, because he's a smart guy. Both of them, both Kyle and Mike, are very smart guys. And they're doing very well. They build a lot more guns than me, and good for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Good for them. But uh, you know, helping them with some relationships, and or introducing them to the right folks to get them. I don't want to say better or worse, but get them in the product line that they have, which is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's that kind of relationship. Yes, I do some stuff with, and have done some stuff for Sons of Liberty. And it's, they're Texas guys, and they're young and they're hungry, and their entrepreneurial spirit is awesome. Um, Hodge Defense is a different company, a very different company, and we're never going to make the money that Sons will make, but we have a different vision on our offerings.
Super. So that again segues into another question. Fellow asks, what does the future look like for HDSI? Like where are we going?
term wise, where are we on terms, right? I mean, what's the future in a year? What's the future in 2 years? What's the future in 10 years? I mean, those are all, believe it or not, Mark, those are different, buddy.
Yeah.
So immediate future is, we've got programs we're working on now, that are, uh, solicitations basically, and they're important. They're meaningful, and being a small company, we have to put a lot of our resources into that. So getting those out of the way simultaneously, I am working on a new rail. There are a couple projects we are working on that will enhance the Hodge defense lineup. There's one thing that's near and dear to me that has something to do with carbines and guns, but not in the way people think. I'm stepping into more of a tech-based manufacturing, not necessarily the way of manufacturing, but tech-based product, I should say. So we're looking at doing some tech-based products, partnering up with some pretty good-sized companies on those, to fulfill a capability gap. Can't get too much into that because we're all under NDA. And I am working on a big major product, with, again, two major companies that everyone would recognize, that if it comes to fruition could really change the way people uh, think about this platform.
That's super cool. What would you say you would view as the next big leap, or is there even a needed jump in the direction of the AR-15 platform? Would that be in the caliber arena, the materials, optics? Like, where do you think we can make the biggest impact in the near future as far as just the industry as a whole?
Well, that's a really good question because there's so many more answers to that. If if people can hit what they wanted to hit as far as ability to hit, shit, we wouldn't need to change a damn thing. You think about it.
Amen.
So I think, an optical revolution, or an optical renaissance. I think we're going through it right now, or we're starting to go through it right now. As far as fire control, getting people on target, getting people more accurate. You're not going to do that with better material and better triggers and cooler rails. And you're going to do that with training, and you do that to some degree in lieu of training, and training space. You're going to do that in technology.
Right.
So I think that's where a huge leap is going to come. You can have all your, next gen, this, that, or the other, but if you don't know how to shoot the damn thing accurately, who cares?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to Alex Hartman the other night on a primary and secondary podcast, and we were chit chatting. He was talking about Vortex's new optic that has the laser rangefinder and it'll apply the ballistic solving for you and all this. But he said, you know, we're heading in the right direction. However, a great shooter behind a standard mill reticle system is still going to outrun that. So we're not quite there yet because of the lag time and the downtime between shooting that has to occur with a system like that. Uh,
Yep.
but I think as you said, I think it's a great place to be headed. It's very interesting. I never would have thought of anything like that. So that's a neat thing.
Well, I mean, people have been kicking, fire control around for a long time. Hell, there was some friends of mine working on something to be able to read wind. Back, damn, 13 years ago or so.
Right.
And this is on a scope. It'll reach dust particulate and shit like that, dude. And again, it's 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And those technologies, again, they improve exponentially. They don't just take a little step here, a little step here, a little step here. They improve exponentially. Look at the damn devices we're doing this podcast with, right?
Yep.
But my point is if depending on the use, right? Depending on the intended use of the M4 carbine, um, the technology is going to make it more effective. Is the shooter interface to the carbine, meaning it's the shooter's ability or your, again, to circle back around, the optical ability to engage a target more effectively and more efficiently.
Yeah.
If you think about, when you're shooting at a paper target or a pig or a deer or whatever, I mean, all your inputs are coming through that glass, man.
Agreed.
And so your mouth's super important, things like that. And your gun's super important to be able to hit what you're aiming at. But, if you and I are sitting in a deer stand and we're looking at a dang deer, 250 meters away, and we're like, hey, yeah, let's knock that thing down. I mean, your margin of error is pretty freaking huge.
Correct.
On that, right? Or potential zombie or whatever.
Right.
And, but I mean, if your glass is off for whatever reason, because the gun will probably do it, but if your glass is off, well, if you don't have the proper fundamentals as well, that's technology, that's training, that's keeping up with that. Hopefully that answers that question in a long, long way.
It surmises to say that it's not the one thing, right? Like there's a lot of different places we could go with new things, and I think at the end of the day, though, the biggest one's always going to come back to the operator of the carbine, because like we can put everything, we can give you all the right answers in the world, but if you suck at taking the test, man, it just ain't going to work. There has to be something that's said about we need some way to figure out how to streamline better, more efficient training for everybody.
Well, for the gun nerds like myself out there, caliber is going to play a role, but as we go up in pressures and calibers, then you do have to pay attention to design and the types of materials used and
Yeah.
that type of thing. So those two are synonymous. They go hand in hand. I mean, there are programs out there right now that the Army's looking at where, we're looking at 70,000 psi at the chamber, and it's like, man, dang, that's pretty. Can you imagine the bolt thrust on that? That mammer jam will be breaking bolts like it's cool. If you look at the bolt and say, hey, can we change the alloy in it? Yeah. Again, as an example, but if you change the alloy in that, well, then you're going to probably have to change the alloy in your extension so you don't get galling, and change the temper. But it is, they all are hand in hand.
For sure.
And I think eventually you're going to have to create something as an in-between, and we can talk about that later.
Right. There has been this question's from a fellow interested in Railflex. He says there's been some recent internet intrigue regarding Railflex as it pertains to MFALs. Now, if you're anything like me and you're listening to this, you have no idea what MFAL even is. So maybe Jim can speak to that. But it says, can you discuss Railflex as it pertains to the design, such as spine lock versus wedge lock versus monolithic, and more importantly, the impact that stuff has on aiming lasers and precision rifle applications? Like, why do we care?
Well, I mean, you should care if you're running a laser.
Right.
And you should care if it impacts, whether you're running a laser or not, if it impacts your accuracy. So when you talk about Railflex, the rail itself, I mean, the extrusion, the machined extrusion part, dude, dog, that thing ain't flexing. It's the lockup that is. And it's the upper that is. And it's the slot between the upper, the relation between the upper and the lower. And there's so many things that have to be taken in consideration on Railflex. Is it important to you? Lots of great rails out there that have more flex than others, but if you're not driving a laser, or if you're not super loading it up on a bipod, and if it's just a short little thing with a light on it, who gives a damn, man? Again, choose the rail you want. But when we first did the wedge lock, Because of rail flexes, the reason why I wanted to go with a little bit longer barrel nut and have as much bearing contact as we could to take that slop out. So the wedge lock was originally created as a 70-75 extrusion with a titanium barrel nut. And when we were working with, at the time, Alcoa, which is now Arconic, on extruding 70-75, and it's very difficult to extrude. You can't, it doesn't extrude like 60-61. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, think of taking Play-Doh and pushing it through a shape. If we have nice brand new Play-Doh that's moist and everything, you can push it through that shape and it gives you a nice star shape or a moon shape or a square or whatever. uh, 70-75 would be that hardened, crusty old ass Play-Doh that you try to get through there, and it's just a lot harder to get through there, and it doesn't always come out as uniformed and as straight as you want it because of the density of it. And so at the time, there's only a couple places in America that it can extrude 70-75. And we were competing for whatever reason, and I don't know if it was contract awards or whatever, but we were competing with some major aerospace companies for extrusion time, and especially those extruders that were pushing 7,000 series alloys. So it's like, okay, yeah, we'll extrude 7,000 series, and but it's going to be 18 months, and you're like, holy crap. So I'm like, okay, I got to build another rail. Well, it was great timing in the way that this is after we won the soldier enhancement program with the Army. It was good timing. Um, I was working with FN, and they had already, FN was the first people to take the wedge lock, have it extruded into 6,000 series, and use it on their guns. Um, and it is still expensive rail to make because of machine time. And they're like, okay, we need another rail that's going to be more competitive and in pricing and just as stiff. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to redo a rail that's not going to be 70-75, what am I going to do? And at the same time, I was working with the Maneuver Center of Excellence over at Fort Benning. We were talking about a new rail for the M4A1 carbine. That's a free float rail. So I started work, and the pinch lock was born. So I wanted a rail that was going to be more economical than the wedge, just as strong as the wedge, but in 60-61. And again, pinch lock was made. Hell, I'd even say pinch lock and S lock are probably way more stiff than the wedge lock.
Super cool.
So, long and short of it, to answer your guys' question, rail flex, yeah, has always been a consideration. The pinch lock was conceived with that in mind, with that lockup. Hell, it was conceived to be able to run a 320 at the bottom of it as a free float rail, and the way its config is. And we did it, and we did it without it shifting. Again, to answer your guys' questions, all three of my rail designs have gone through tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars worth of testing, both in impact and drop and deflection. The S-Lock especially, partially because they didn't capture data the first time they were testing a particular rail. They had to redo the test entirely all over again with the same rail to make sure it was captured on video and all this, that, and the other. So the S-Lock has gone through that twice. And we're talking, dropping at 6 feet on a simulated weighted gun. In the way of simulated, what I mean by that is magazine, optic, you know, sling, laser, that type of thing. 9 different angles, onto concrete.
So it's a lot. It's a lot. And that, I think that goes to exacerbate even further the point of like, man, if that kind of stuff isn't coming into play for you, then who cares? Like it's totally okay to not have the greatest thing ever all the time in every facet, right? I have guys ask me all the time on the internet, should I get a cold hammer forged chrome lined barrel? And the answer for most people is probably not. You don't really need that if you're not shooting
Unless
it.
they're buying a Hodge defense one.
Correct.
Not playing.
But
Not playing.
but I also think there's something to be said about knowing that you've got the best thing there is, right? And I tell guys all the time, man, like, do you need a cold hammer forged chrome line barrel? Well, if you're not dumping 10,000 rounds a year, or something like that, or more, I personally, I don't think you're going to see any kind of benefit from it. However, if it makes you sleep better at night, knowing that you've got it, then that's intrinsic value that matters. So buy it if you want to, but don't be going around, bitching about people that did buy it because you didn't, and because certain people require certain things, and certain people just want certain things, and that's the beautiful thing about. I think you mentioned it earlier. Capitalism allows us to do what we want to, so that's pretty cool. There's a personal one in here if you're willing to go there with us. Fella says that on a interview you did with Recoil Magazine a while back, you had mentioned that you were a follower of Christ, and he wants to know what kind of role Jesus Christ plays in Jim Hodge's life, and in maybe even in Hodge Defense's realm of things.
Well, it is personal. Ladies and gentlemen, he does play a role in my life. And I think about it every day. There are decisions that are made that are, uh, I wouldn't say Christ based. It's just the right decisions to make. Because I don't always make the right decisions, but I try to make decisions as if I'm, kind of being judged for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense to me.
And if it wasn't for my beautiful family and my wife, I probably um, wouldn't be as close. But yeah, we're a spiritual family, and I'm proud of it. And if anyone ever wants to talk to me about it, they can call me.
It's always a good conversation. I think there's something to be said about a man who truly does internalize. I'm working not for human masters, but for the one true King. That makes you try hard kind of bump up a little bit.
Well, I got a long ways before they allow me back into heaven. So,
Right. Super cool. And then I'm gonna stop the questions from the audience with this last one. Everybody wants to know what is Jim's Hodge rifle setup? What barrel length? Um, what optic? What are you typically going to when you're going to grab a gun? And I know that's a loaded question based on context of whatever it is we're doing, but just general, like Jim's going to throw a gun in the truck. What's he taking?
depends on where I'm going. I hate to be an ass like that, but it depends on where I'm going, man. There's a tool for every job. And but the one that you're going to get shot with when you break into my house is a 12.5, and it's a Franken gun. I think y'all have seen pictures of it. Maybe y'all have seen pictures of it. It's a gun that um, oh man, my 12.5 barrel's shooting 2 minutes. All right, send it back. I'll get you a new one. And I get it and take it out and I shoot it, and I'm like, God damn, this thing is accurate. I'm keeping it, you know? And it wasn't shooting. So there's that barrel. Then, hey, there's a little blim on my rail. Okay, yeah, we'll take care of it. I get it, and I'm like, okay, there is a blim on the rail. No big deal. Hey, there's a scratch on my upper. Okay, we'll take care of it. I get it. I'm like, well, I'll put it on my gun. My gun is rejects. And um, there ain't a damn thing. It's got a moon rock. Well, it's machine gun lower, but it's got a moon rock lower on it. It's got a damn Matu uh, tie ano upper with the scratch on it. I don't know how it got there. It's got an S lock. It's got a 12.5 barrel. It's got a Inconel gas block. It's got all the new Gucci shit in it.
What is a moon rock lower for those who have not been around?
So when we were working on aluminum lithium, Alcoa Defense. Alcoa is like a big forging house, like Anchor Harvey or Cerro or Cardinal or whatever. Alcoa used to forge a lot of stuff, and they still do forge a lot of stuff, but they don't do AR stuff like they once did. And again, I had a profound relationship with Alcoa Defense at the time. I was even mentioned in their literature. And we were trying to forge receivers. And it's kind of like the lost art of building the pyramid. There were guys that they had never forged AR receivers. Well, they hadn't done it in like a bazillion years. And it was like we were trying to redo it again. And moon rocks were a byproduct of, and I don't know if you guys know the forging process. It'll probably bore you to death, but nonetheless, they're going to take something about the size of a Coke can and put it in a rough die, and it's going to come down and slam it. And they're going to put it in a finished die. It's going to come down and slam it again, which gets a near net shape. And they're going to put it in a flashing die, and it's going to cut all the shit off the side of it, all little squirty stuff off the side of it. But every time you go from die to die to die, you got to spray a release agent. And it's like a mist that you just spray on the alloys, and that it releases them from the dies. So they don't stick. Well, if it's not atomized normally or properly, as far as the mist, that's where the moon rocks came in, is where it wasn't atomized right. And the guys forgot to clean that shit off before they went to temper. And that's where the little divots came from, was the release agent. I know it's boring as hell for a lot of people, but man, shit, we looked at that problem for like 6 months trying to figure that out. And when I'm talking engineers, I mean, I'm talking about a team of engineers for the world's largest and America's largest alloy aluminum company that's been forging stuff for, everyone. And so that's where the moon rocks came from.
Super.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to a long time ago, before Mark Smith was anybody that anybody cared about other than his mama. I had an opportunity to purchase a moon rock lower, and I actually didn't have the money that the fellow wanted, and I ended up telling a friend of mine about it, and he ended up buying it, and he actually has that lower to this day. I think you know Andrew Ryder,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, Andrew's got that lower. Pretty neat how everything kind of comes full circle. But that's super cool, man.
That was my first attempt that I screwed up royally. No, I don't want to say I screwed up. The team screwed up. We never went to market with them. And the ones that I had left over, I sent them to friends. And because they understood the show, right? And it was like the moon rock, in a lot of ways, why I'm so partial to it. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of, humility. There ain't nothing wrong with it. Just looks like shit.
Well, I think that's. I'm glad you said that, man. I think that's a part of Hodge Defense and who Jim is at his core that a lot of people don't get a taste of. It's really easy when you have lots of people that are interested in your stuff and that follow you and all, that you kind of become this internet personality, and people forget that.
Dog, I ain't no internet personality. I mean, for Christ's sakes, I'm never on there practically anymore.
But you are, is what I'm saying, and like that's what I mean. Like everybody kind of forgets that at the end of the day, like we pee just like everybody else, man. Like we just a
Oh, for sure.
bunch of normal dudes. And honestly, if we're all kind of being honest, the vast majority of things that we do well, we kind of like it was sort of a blessing, man. Like we kind of lucked into it. we're not like these amazing, brilliant, superhuman people. We're just regular
Oh, hell
dudes
no.
that work hard and kind of had some good opportunities.
Absolutely, man. I pick my nose just the same as everybody else.
Right.
And if you've ever talked to me, I do genuinely try to be as nice as I can to people because I do care what people think of me because we all have our insecurities, you know, and, I've got mine, you've got yours, everyone listening's got theirs. And I care. I care what people think.
I think it shows to the discerning end user. It does show. It matters, right?
We haven't talked about barrels yet. We haven't talked about a lot of shit. There's some things that I want people to understand. One of them is the amount of testing and effort has gone into our stuff. And we're talking about testing, not just sitting on grabbing a bunch of dudes and sitting on a bench. I'm talking about testing with like engineers and software that on stuff that we've created, not in just, again, the realm of, hey, let's go pick this thing up and I'm going to chuck it across the yard and video it or run it over with the tractor trailer and this, that, and the other. No, man, no, no, no. We're talking instrumental testing. We're talking engineering testing. We're talking spending a lot of money and rounds and labor and engineering time to flex our stuff. What does that mean to you guys? Uh, well, scientifically and from a data perspective, it means we've done our homework and we fix things along the way. I will tell you, things do get by. I will tell you, we don't make the most perfect stuff. We just make the stuff that I like, and hopefully you like the same, right? It's my version of the pizza the way I like to dress it, and I hope you like it. But it's just we're not just one of those companies, and again, when you're dealing with major companies, you're going to get all the fringe benefits of the testing and the engineering support, the professional support. That's just not your opinion, right? From a designer perspective. But there's a lot of smaller companies that can't afford that. And I'm a smaller company. And I've been really blessed to partner with some larger companies that gave a shit. And that there's a lot of people that use my IP. And I'm super blessed for that. And thank you everyone that does that. I very much appreciate it. And so does my daughter's college education. So at the end of the day, we are a small company, but we're not a company that hasn't designed and developed things from the best way for me to describe it, from a lab coat engineer perspective. You know, we've done it professionally, guys. And uh, if you like it, you like it. Look at the barrels. I mean, the amount of money we spend on ammo, and I say we collectively, the people who have tested it, third party tested it as well, um, on barrels is insane. You know, we build a barrel that will go a bazillion rounds. But if you think about it, if I give you you buy a Hodge Defense barrel and it lasts, 40,000 rounds. What was the highest round count you got on one of my barrels, Mark?
42,000.
How much money do you think that cost you?
A lot. I don't know. I would say likely I could sit down and come up with a number, but that's at close to $300 to $400 a case times 42. That's significant.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy used cars with what you fed that gun that you'll never ever get back, other than the experience and training, right? And you have to decide. Well, I mean, that's how I looked at it. That's how I looked at it in the way that I wanted to build a longer lasting gobstopper Well, number one for Alpha One, but number two, something that you're not going to have to repurchase. And our barrels are expensive, and they're expensive for a reason. They cost me a lot. I'm just not making a lot of money, but we go through an extra step in the process that people don't. They'll go through one version of that step, but we go through another version of that step, and that's proprietary. So I'm not going to get into what it is, but at the end of the day, we disrupt a whole line of assembly. And for us to do that, it costs the money, it costs the company that's making our barrels money because we're disruption in the line. But FN also licenses my barrels from me, even though they make them for me. And, uh, and again, when you buy a barrel, it's $400. I get it. You can buy 2 barrels of something else. Well, it's going to last twice as long, if not longer. And how much money are you going to spend burning it down? Where you're going to do that with a great barrel that may not just last as long, although you're still going to have to replace it, or you're just going to throw it away at the upper. Probably not going to do that. You're going to have to pay someone to replace your barrel, or you're going to do it yourself. And what's your time and labor worth? Um, so that's how I look at my barrels. And I'm not saying, I mean, I'll never tell you guys my stuff is the best. I'll never tell that to you. Again, it's up to you what you think it is. And a lot of great companies out there doing a lot of wonderful things, building a lot of great guns.
Would you think would it be safe to say that if a fella bought a Hodge barrel, they would have the majority of the magic that is Hodge Defense?
Yeah. Well, they'll have a majority of dollars spent in testing.
That's the meat and potatoes of the brand, though, right? Would it be safe to say that?
No, I think the brand is. I don't believe that the brand is its product. I think the brand is more than a product.
Well, right, and you know, I mean, in terms of like, I want a Hodge Defense, but I can't find one to buy, and I can't, or I can't afford one to buy. Like the barrel would be the choice to make if that's where you're at, and you wanted the majority of the performance that the product offers.
Yes, if that barrel's what is important to you, and you understand going into that barrel is not gassed or it's chambered in a 5.56 NATO chambering, but it's gassed for 5.56 NATO pressures. If you plan on shooting, Wolf, uh, steel case, whatever, ain't gonna cycle that well. It's not made for it. But if you are going to run the barrel for its intended purpose, and that's why you buy a Hodge Defense product, is you're going to run it for its intended purpose. Yeah, buy 5 of them.
Yeah.
Um, but again, we don't. Our stuff is not for everybody, and that's okay. And if it's not, and you want to ask me a question, where else to get something, I'll be happy to point you in the right direction.
Super, super. Well, is there anything else you would like to hit on, sir, before we close this out?
No, I think we're good, Mark.
So, man, I appreciate the heck out of you coming on here and taking time out of your day. I know you're super busy, as am I, and most people in 2023. World's kind of getting back into gear, and it really does mean a lot. I can pay you, and I can do all this different stuff. I can use your stuff, but I can't give you back your time, which I think is pretty invaluable. So I really do appreciate it.
Mark, I really appreciate you as well. I know you're busy. I appreciate you shooting our stuff. I know you pay for a lot of our stuff. This is your decision. We don't pay you, and I appreciate you having a belief in the brand.
Yeah, I've constantly said that if I didn't shoot for Hodge, I would still shoot Hodge, and that matters. So all in all, man, that's super cool. Again, I appreciate you coming on and chit chatting with us. And I hope to talk to you very soon. And I'm pretty excited about some things that are coming down the pipe. So if that's all you got, then we'll close out with that.
All right, buddy. Good hearing your voice.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I appreciate Jim coming on, as I'm sure all of you do as well. If you want to know more about Hodge Defense, you can go to hodgedefense.com and just kind of read up on what's there. You can also look for his products at places like Big Tex Ordnance, Weapon Outfitters, OP Tactical, and other places like that. Enjoy the hunt, and good luck on procuring one of these fantastic machines. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, that's the show for the day. As always, if you'd like to know more, you can visit us at www.jbstraininggroup.com. If you'd like to get in on a class, you can check the roster and the schedule, which is always changing. If you'd like to host a class, you can hit me up at jbstraininggroup@gmail.com. I appreciate the heck out of you guys. Make sure you talk to Jesus today, and we'll see you on the range.